Welcome back to Our Walk in Christ. First, let me know how you like this new studio setup. It's a lot less busy, a lot nicer, and so I'm still experimenting a little bit with it. So the next thing in mind, we are starting in a new section here called Questioning Jesus. Once again, if you're watching this on YouTube, realize that YouTube does greatly downregulate this content. So please feel free to spread it and pass it along to everybody that you know. We also find these on BitChute as well. These are cross-posted. Follow along on the social media if you want to see when and where we are posting next. Those are all going to be linked. And with that, let's go ahead and dive on into our discussion on questioning God. So this is the new series. We're calling it Questioning Jesus. And today we want to look back through the Old Testament and the New Testament and look at times when people have asked God fundamental questions. And this is critically important because as we are asking God, we have to recognize there's different motivations that we come. Sometimes it's an outrage. Oh, God, why would you do this thing? Sometimes it's, God, when are these great things you're talking about going to come to pass? Sometimes it's people saying, if you're God, like I was as an arrogant teenager, if you're God, strike me down. A lot of interesting questions, a lot of motivations, and I've examined the scriptures looking at the questions of Jesus from that individual perspective. And what we want to do is we want to look at the different questions people have asked. So today we're just going to be doing a brief introduction to the series, A Generic Questioning God. All of us, I think at some point in time, have questioned God, even the atheists. As it said, there are no atheists in foxholes. Well, thinking back and thinking about it, are there any atheists in foxholes? Their grenades are falling by. God, why would you do this? Why would you have war? This is the type of thing that happens frequently. Of course, I wanted to start out by looking at the Old Testament prophet of Habakkuk. As he evaluated this, he's seeing all sorts of problems and troubles and strifes and wars going out in his arena. And he busts out with this question, Habakkuk chapter 1, verses 2 and 3. How long, O Lord, will I call for help, and you will not hear? I cry out to you, violence, yet you do not save. Why do you make me see iniquity and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists. Contention arises. Habakkuk, looking at his nation in conflict and questioning God. God, why would you possibly do this to us? There's many other places where we find similar sentiments. Obviously, we're not going to go to all of them, but let's go ahead and also have a look at Psalm chapter 13 and looking at verse 1. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? Cries, pleas out to God. Many examples like this would be found. So the next question is, what would happen if we were to have some such dialogue with God? What would be the result? What if God came down and answered us today and said, all right, you have asked me questions, I will provide for you answers. Would he just come down and provide answers? Of course not. We have an example in Job. Job, he's experienced some of the greatest, most powerful, yet horrible things a man could ever experience. We read in Job chapter 30 at verse 20, I cry out to you for help, but you do not answer me. I stand up, and you turn your attention against me. Here's this man crying out to God. Why have you done this? Allow me to ask you questions. What is going on? He continues on in Job 31, verse 35. Oh, that I had one ear to hear me. Behold, here is my signature. Let the Almighty answer me, and the indictment with which my adversary has written. God shows up. And in several chapters here, God comes down and asks a series of questions. Somebody once has counted these questions, and I forget what exactly the number is, but it kind of starts. He comes down and he now speaks. He says, who is this who darkens my counsel by words without knowledge? Why, God, would you do this? Who are you to even dare ask such a question? He continues on, verse 38, chapter 3. Now gird, 38, verse 3, excuse me. Now gird up your loins like a man, and I will ask you, and you will instruct me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who set its measurements, since you know? Who stretched out the line on it? On where were its bases sunk? He goes on through several chapters asking questions after questions after questions after questions until Job is forced. Job chapter 40 verses 3 through 5. Job answered the Lord and he said, "Behold, I am insignificant. What can I reply to you? I lay my hand on my mouth, and once I have spoken, and I will not answer, even twice, and I will add nothing more." You see, Job was humbled. He was humbled by the encounter with God. And that is how we should all be. We should be humbled by our encounters with God. It is not that God is coming out and telling us, "Hey, you tell me everything and I will give every answer to you." Even the most faithful man on earth, the man that God spoke face to face with, still had to hide his presence. Remember Exodus chapter 33, verses 18 through 20. Moses said, "I pray you, show me your glory." And he said, as God said, "I myself will make all my goodness pass before you and will proclaim the name of the Lord before you. And I shall be gracious to whom I will be gracious. I will show compassion on whom I will show compassion." But God said, "You cannot see my face, for no man can see me and live." As my arrogant teenage self cried out, "If you're God, strike me dead." Well, it turned out that God had better plans for me, as my atheist arrogance would not allow me to carry through. We all question God. Sometimes we do it from a flawed and sinful position. But the reality is, God knows our hearts. He knows what is true, and he also knows our propensity to sin. He knows our propensity to sin. Look at Luke chapter 16 at verse 15. He said to them, "You are those who justify yourselves in the sight of men, but God knows your hearts. For that which is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God." You see, we often question God in our own self-righteousness, our own indignations. We seek out answers to God, not because we want the answers necessarily, but because we want to justify ourselves in our positions. I mean, really, even the rulers found themselves in these positions. The rulers asked God questions. And as the rulers asked God questions, they were placed before them. I'm thinking specifically of Jesus before Pilate. Of course, we'll dive into this story in much greater detail later on in this series. But as he dives into this, we have to recognize that he asks Jesus, "Are you really a king?" And then he asks Jesus another fascinating question that we would all love it to see the answer to it. But then he walks away before God can give an answer. This is in John 18, verses 33 to 38. Therefore Pilate entered again into the praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus answered, "Are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me?" And Pilate answered, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation, the chief priests, delivered you to me. What have you done?" And Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm." Therefore Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" And Jesus answered, "You say correctly that I am a king, for I have been born, and for this one I have come into the world, to testify to the truth, that everyone who is of truth can hear my voice." And Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" And when he said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, "I find no guilt in him." See, here's Pilate. He's like, "Yeah, oh, so you're a king. What is truth?" And then he walks away before the answer. The one question, if we would come before God, God, in this crazy world, what is truth? The one person who could have asked that question and gotten a good and rightful answer, he turned away. He didn't want to hear it. And that's how most of us are. We don't necessarily want to hear it. We have all questioned God at times. Many of the instances, questions have been asked by prophets and psalmists as an expression of torment of their soul. Why, God, why? We find it over in the Psalms. Some questions are asked for our comfort. Why, God, did you take my child away? Others for knowledge, like the disciples. When are these things coming, God? And it's like, these are the good little people in church. They got their notebooks ready, the pens ready. All right, here's the answer, Pastor. Tell me the answer. I'm going to scribble it down. Not everybody approaches God with that same comfort and knowledge. Others approach it for arrogance. So if you're God, can you make a rock so big not even you can lift it? The arrogance oozes off. And if God were completely and only just, we would all be gone and vanish. Because he is a holy and a righteous God that cannot be around our sin. The question we want to ask throughout this series is, what type of questions do we ask, and what type of answers do we want to hear back? These are important questions. So in this series, we're going to be looking at a lot of questions from the Gospels. We'll be looking at all of these various questions surrounding Jesus. Some of them were honest questions. The disciples coming up to him, the disciples of John the Baptist coming up to him, "Are you the one that is coming, or should be looking for another?" Think of Nicodemus or the woman at the well. Honest questions. I want an answer to this. What did Jesus reply to those honest questions? Sometimes they're questions of ministry. God, why could we not cast out this demon? Sometimes it's questions about the end times. When are these things coming? Not only the disciples asked this and got an answer, the Pharisees asked and said, "I ain't even going to bother telling you. You're not paying attention anyway." Sometimes there's questions in our heart that we are afraid to ask that the omniscient God knows we are seeking the answers to. Sometimes he'll tell us the answers to questions we are too afraid to ask. Some people have come with questions to trap Jesus. Get the Romans to do your dirty work. How many times do we find that in our modern society? Try and trap us into being a Jesus. I think of the people. A known homosexual couple goes into a known Christian bakery. "Bake me a cake." Well, we can't. It's against our faith. Sick 'em law. Sick 'em lawyers. Sick 'em society. It's the type of thing we start to see, isn't it? It is indeed. Trapping Jesus. Are we going to be treated any different as Christians? Sometimes it's questions to clarify his teachings. Jesus, tell us the meaning of this parable. Sometimes, like Job, Jesus starts asking us questions back. What is really in your heart? Do you not see the error in your ways? These are the types of questions we are going to be looking at as we carry forth on this series on questioning Jesus. So make sure you stay following up on the channel. Catch each of these guys. They will all be in their own individual playlist. And then feel free to pass this on to other people as we go on through. So thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy your daily walk in our Lord.